Dr. Varela usually loved the stillness of late evening on Satora, the subtle hum of the ventilation systems, and the faint swirl of bluish lights along sterile corridors. Yet nothing felt serene about tonight. It began with an emergency alert that jolted every medical professional in the building. A foreign craft had crashed just outside the capital city, and its sole occupant, a member of the mysterious human species, was in critical condition. Arrivals from unknown species weren't exactly unheard of on Satora's busiest medical facility, the Interstellar Health Center, but this particular species was new to them, and his injuries were far more severe than anything Dr. Varela had ever encountered. She stood in one of the center's transparent hallways as the rescue shuttle pulled up outside. Her reflection against the pane showed a face more drawn than usual, her greenish-blue skin looking almost metallic under the corridor's lighting. She brushed back her short, silver-white hair, exhaling a long breath as she tried to mentally prepare for what was coming. She could hear the commotion below, footsteps, hurried voices, and the hiss of pneumatic doors opening. Through the wide windows, she spotted a group of medics rushing a stretcher through the landing bay. The figure on it was clearly humanoid, though his features looked quite alien compared to Cedarant's. He appeared pale, with short hair that was a brownish color rather than the shimmering silver most Cedarant's had. Varela keyed in the door override and stepped out to meet them. Medical drones hovered in neat formation, each one scanning for vital signs. The being's clothing had been torn away to allow immediate access to his injuries, revealing a muscular torso covered in blood that burned a vivid, shocking red. Cedarans had pale green blood, and other interstellar species commonly had violet, teal, or even milky, translucent blood. Red was rare enough to draw universal alarm in the medical team. On the stretcher, the being's eyes were closed, his breath shallow. When the drone scanners detected Varela's presence and her authorization, they displayed readings she barely had time to interpret. "He's taken multiple injuries," one of the nurses said, her voice strained. "Blunt force trauma to the chest, possible spinal fractures, extensive internal bleeding. The crash site was unspeakable. He must have ejected from a damaged vessel." Varela nodded and fell in a pace beside the stretcher. "Get him to the main operating ward. I'll call for immediate triage. Has anyone verified if there are other survivors?" "Negative," the nurse replied. "It looks like he was traveling alone. No sign of additional life pods. It's either a scout ship or a personal transport." They maneuvered the stretcher through a pair of sliding doors that led into the triage bay. Bright light bathed everything in an almost harsh glow, a deliberate design choice to reduce shadows for the surgical teams. Medical staff was already bustling around. A second nurse slipped an identification band onto the patient's wrist. The only data on it was species, human, and name, unknown. "Let's hope we can update that band soon," Varela muttered under her breath. She turned to address the entire team. "Begin rapid fluid scans. We need to know where the bleeding is and how extensive. Oxy infusion if his respiration is too low, though we have no idea about the oxygen tolerance for humans, so be cautious. Prepare a flexible dosage of analgesics. And someone give me every scrap of data on humans from the cultural archives. We may have minimal references from other star systems." The bustle intensified. Drone after drone whirred above the operating table, projecting real-time holographic readouts of the man's vital signs. His heart rate was disturbingly erratic, dipping precariously low before spiking again. Tiny cameras mounted on the drones highlighted every bruise, laceration, and contusion. The sensors took a full-body scan, revealing internal hemorrhages in multiple organs. On Satora, or among many known species, it would have been classified as a near-fatal situation. If left untreated, he had minutes left, maybe less. Varela clenched her jaw, forcing herself to focus and shut out the swirl of questions. She was a doctor, after all, and saving a life, any life, was her primary duty. With the mechanical hiss of the hovering surgical instruments overhead, she carefully directed the first procedure. Guided by drone feedback, she attempted to close internal wounds, using a specialized coagulant that the Interstellar Health Center often employed on a wide range of species. Absurdly enough, the interior of the human body shared certain structural similarities with a few bipedal races she had seen, though the distribution of organs was slightly different. She marveled at how quickly his tissues took to the coagulant. Despite the severity of the trauma, she could see faint signs that his body was trying to heal itself. Still, he was in dire condition. Hours rolled by in a blur of blood, sweat, and unwavering focus. By the time Varela finally stepped away from the operating table, she was exhausted to the point of trembling. Yet somehow, the man's condition had stabilized. Her team had kept him alive, barely. It might have been luck, or it might have been something else entirely. In her experience, injuries like his were almost always fatal. She sank into a chair beside the bed they transferred him to, letting the next shift of medical staff take over routine checks. Her mind buzzed with questions. What was a lone human doing so far from the usual trade routes? How had he endured such catastrophic injuries long enough to land on Satora? Human physiology was rumored to be resilient. She'd heard a few unconfirmed reports from outpost physicians on fringe worlds. Still, seeing it firsthand was staggering. By the time she emerged from the operating ward, the corridors were nearly empty. Most of the day's staff had retired, leaving only skeleton crews. That suited Varela fine. She was used to long hours, but as she passed a reflective glass surface, she noticed how fatigued she looked. Dark smudges under golden eyes, short hair ruffled, and her lips set in a worried line. She retreated to her office, hoping to find some reference to humans in the central database. Unfortunately, the data was sparse. Only tidbits gleaned from scattered encounters. Earth, the humans' home planet, was located far on the other side of a cluster of trade worlds, apparently not a major hub of advanced technology, but known for the inhabitants' resourcefulness and adaptability. There were rumors that they survived on oxygen levels that would harm many other species, endured temperature fluctuations without specialized gear, and possessed immune responses capable of battling pathogens that would lay low as Cedarin. Still, rumors were not the same as verified research. Sighing, Varela closed the data console and rubbed her temples. She decided to check on her patient again. On the way, she passed a group of uniformed figures in the corridor. One stood out, a tall Cedarin with a stern expression, wearing the insignia of the Cedarin Security Division. His name was Joran, an officer rumored to have direct ties to the highest circles of government. Varela had seen him around only a few times, but never had reason to speak with him. He stepped forward, blocking her path. "Dr. Varela," he said in a clipped tone, "I presume you're the head physician handling our human visitor." She nodded, trying to gauge his intent. "That's correct. He's in critical care. Do you have new information about his identity?" Joran's gaze was cool, appraising. "We are investigating. For security reasons, all data on this patient's condition and physiology is now classified. We'd appreciate full access to his medical charts." Classified. Varela's brows knit. "This is a medical facility, not a military outpost. I understand your concern if you believe he poses a threat, but I have orders," Joran said curtly. "All external communications from your facility regarding this human are to be blocked unless approved by the Ministry of Security. The official stance is that we must protect Satora from potential threats or unknown pathogens." She stiffened, a knot of discomfort forming in her chest. She had encountered bureaucratic meddling before, but rarely so soon in a patient's treatment. "He's severely injured and unconscious, hardly a threat to national security. But I'll comply with official protocol as needed for the safety of our planet." "Glad to hear it," Joran replied, though there was no warmth in his voice. "We'll be monitoring developments closely." He walked away, leaving Varela unsettled. She wondered why the government was taking such an immediate interest in this alien. Humans were new to them, yes, but the intensity of official oversight felt oddly disproportionate. Deciding that the best solution was to gather more information, she resumed her walk toward the recovery room. She found the patient lying motionless, still hooked up to a network of tubes and monitors. A specialized scanner hovered at his side, analyzing the slow but definite improvement in his vital signs. She watched his chest rise and fall, thinking again how remarkable it was that he even had the strength to breathe. Her gaze traveled to the color of his blood, still staining some of the bandages. Bright red. It was a color that triggered something in her mind, a sense of alarm, perhaps, or fascination. On Satora, red was rarely found in living organisms. She wondered if the color was part of why Joran seemed so unnerved. Or maybe the official had other reasons entirely. One of the younger medical interns approached, eyes flicking from the sleeping human to Varela. "Doctor," she said softly, "we completed a battery of tests, though some of our standard procedures aren't calibrated to his physiology. The healing factor is beyond anything we've recorded. Tissue samples show an advanced cellular response to trauma. It's as if his body is rushing to close wounds internally." Varela nodded. "I saw that in the operating theater. Part of it is the coagulant we used, no question. But a large part is his own biology. This species might be naturally resilient. Have you analyzed possible immunological implications?" We started. Preliminary results indicate a robust immune system that reacts quickly to foreign threats. We also detected unusual microclusters in his body, like symbiotic bacteria that might play a key role. It's too early for firm conclusions, though. Keep working on it, but do so discreetly. Security wants everything kept under wraps. Varela sighed. "I'd rather share our knowledge with a wider medical community, but apparently the ministry has different ideas." The intern gave a wry smile of understanding. "Yes, doctor. We'll be careful." Varela settled in for a long vigil beside her patient. She let her mind wander, thinking about how many times she had done this, kept a lonely watch by a sickbed as other staff rotated in and out. She enjoyed spending these quiet moments analyzing data, reflecting on the mysteries of biology. Yet tonight, those contemplations were tinged with apprehension. There was a sense that something bigger was at stake than simply treating a rare alien traveler. To keep herself awake, she began noting every subtle improvement on a datapad. A slight increase in neural activity, a steadier pulse, a strengthening in oxygen saturation. It was remarkable how each parameter trended upward, if only marginally. Even so, the patient remained unconscious. She found herself wondering about his life before this moment. Was he an explorer? A merchant? A soldier? Had he been searching for something, stumbled on Satora by accident? When dawn finally arrived and the corridor outside began to fill with the day's shift, Varela felt her eyes grow heavy. She took a short break, stepping into a quiet lounge to wash her face and maybe find a stimulant drink. Yet as she did so, an urgent message echoed through her communicator. It was from a triage unit. Her patient had opened his eyes. She rushed back, heart pounding. The drones parted to let her near. The man was awake, albeit weak, blinking in confusion at his surroundings. His features looked smoother now that the deep lines of pain had eased, but there was a new tension in his eyes, something closer to fear or wariness. Varela quickly activated the center's universal translator, praying it was sophisticated enough to handle any human languages. "Can you understand me?" she asked, her voice calm and measured. "My name is DR. Varela." His gaze darted around, taking in the drifting drones, the medical staff with metallic blue skin. Then he cleared his throat, a hoarse sound. "Where am I?" His accent was strange, but the translator recognized it quickly, overlaying a faint mechanical rendering that Varela could parse in her own language. "You're in the Interstellar Health Center on the planet Satora," Varela replied. "We found you badly injured after your craft crashed. We've been trying to save your life. You're human, correct?" He swallowed, coughed, then nodded. "Yes. My nome is Raina. Ryan Blackwood, a pilot from Earth. Thank you for helping me." He let out a heavy exhale, as though speaking took every ounce of his strength. "I'm not sure what went wrong with my ship. Some engine failure or sabotage. Maybe. There's time to figure all that out once you're more stable," Varela said gently, motioning for one of the nurses to bring water. "You've been through an ordeal, and you're very lucky to be alive. I've never seen injuries as severe as yours respond so well to treatment." His lips curved into a faint smirk. Humans are tougher than we look. She studied him more closely. Now that she could see him alive and speaking, the differences between them became more striking. The way his hair grew in short, thick tufts on top of his head, the subtle pinkish tone to his skin, the shape of his eyes. Yet there was a spark of intelligence and curiosity there that transcended species. She was simultaneously intrigued and relieved. No matter what the government might say, she was determined to help him recover. Ryan tried to shift in his bed and immediately grimaced. My ribs, they feel like they're on fire. You fractured several. I did what I could, but you must still heal naturally. For now, rest. We have some pain relief medication tailored to your physiology, or at least a best approximation. But I need you to be honest if something feels off. He nodded slowly, then closed his eyes for a moment. I appreciate it. I owe you. He couldn't finish the thought. He was too tired. Varela motioned for him to relax. Don't strain yourself. I'll check on you. Regularly. Yet even as she spoke the words, she felt a stirring of unease in the back of her mind. Joran's presence, the classification order, the caution swirling around the human's case. There was so much more going on than a typical rescue scenario. She couldn't begin to guess how the next few days would unfold. She only knew that this man, Ryan Blackwood, needed her protection if he was going to have a fair chance at survival, both medically and in whatever political game was brewing behind scenes. She resolved to watch over him, no matter what it cost her. The news of Ryan's miraculous recovery spread quickly through the facility. Other doctors and interns visited, peering in on him with open curiosity. Some approached Varela with awe, as though she had worked a miracle. But she insisted it was mostly the human's own body, some inherent biological mechanism that speeded tissue repair in ways Cedarans didn't fully understand. Word inevitably reached the higher authorities as well. Late the next day, Varela received a summons to appear before a small assembly of government representatives. She arrived at a sleek conference room on the top floor of the facility, its walls polished to a mirrored sheen. The table was flanked by individuals in formal attire. The Minister of Science and Medicine, her aides, and a few uniformed members of Satora's Defense Council. Joran stood behind them, arms folded, his gaze never leaving Varela's face. Dr. Varela, said the minister, a tall woman with braided silver hair that glinted in the overhead lights. We've reviewed your initial medical findings. Quite extraordinary, wouldn't you agree? Varela felt her shoulders tighten. His injuries were critical, but he's recovering faster than any species I've treated. Yes, it's remarkable. I'm still compiling data. One of the defense officials leaned forward, tapping a stylus against his fingertips. We want to transfer him to a specialized research facility. The sooner, the better. We have technology there that can fully map his genetic makeup. If we can isolate the factor behind this rapid healing, imagine the benefits to our soldiers or even to civilians. Long-term, we might unlock new disease treatments. Varela's heart sank. He's still in a delicate state. A sudden transfer could jeopardize his recovery. Also, ethically, he's an intelligent being with the right to refuse. We can't treat him like a test subject. The minister gave a tight smile. Of course, we don't intend to harm him. We only want to learn from him, and he would receive the best possible care in our research division. However, for security reasons, the final decision rests with us. After all, we know nothing of his background or motives. If he represents a threat, we must be prepared. Threat. The word echoed in Varela's mind. She glanced at Joran, who was regarding her without a flicker of emotion. With respect, she said carefully, there is no indication that he's a threat to Satora. He was a lone pilot, likely crashed due to mechanical failure. We should treat him with the same compassion we extend to any visitor in need. The defense official cleared his throat. Doctor, I appreciate your perspective, but the council has decided to move forward with the transfer in 2 days' time. We trust you'll keep him stable until then. It felt like her entire body tensed at once. There was no winning an argument in this forum. They were turning the scenario into a matter of national security, an excuse to do whatever they wanted with Ryan. She glanced around the table, searching for any sign of dissent, but found none. If that is your order, she managed, I will comply medically. But I must protest the ethics. He's not just an organism. He's a conscious, sentient individual. We'll note your concerns, the minister said, with a thin veneer of politeness. You're dismissed, Doctor. Varela could hardly breathe as she left. Joran followed her into the corridor. Your dedication is admirable, he said softly. But don't let it blind you to the reality of how things work on Satora. The Council's word is final. Attempting to thwart it could end poorly. She shot him a fierce look. Why is the government so eager to seize him? Joran's lips twitched in a hint of a smile. Because this is an unprecedented discovery. You must see that. If his biology holds secrets to accelerated healing, it could change everything for us. Or perhaps we can ensure we're never threatened by humans in the future. That's not medical science, Varela said, her voice trembling. That's exploitation. His eyes narrowed. Call what you like. My job is to keep Satora safe. Your job is to heal patients, but you also serve the planet's interests. Don't forget that. Without another word, he turned and strode away. She stood there, alone in the corridor, feeling as though the air had grown colder. She thought about Ryan's battered body, still, struggling to mend itself under her care. He had no idea that the next few days might end with him strapped to a research table in some high-security lab. Varela realized she was faced with a choice. Either remain silent and follow orders, or defy the Council to protect him. The mere thought of defiance was terrifying. She had spent her career building a reputation as a dedicated, law-abiding physician. But she had also taken an oath to do no harm. Where did her true duty lie? She tried to work normally through the rest of the day, but she couldn't focus. The possibility of sneaking Ryan out of the facility crossed her mind. But how? The building was guarded, and Joran likely had men posted everywhere. Even if she did manage to help Ryan escape, where would he go? He was still weak, relying on medical support. Unless there was external help, someone from Earth, or from any interplanetary alliance that recognized humans as more than curiosities. Yet all official communication lines were monitored. After her shift, she sank wearily onto a bench in a dim lounge reserved for staff. She tried to gather her thoughts, but exhaustion weighed on her. Footsteps approached, and she looked up to see a familiar face, Dr. Phylan, a colleague she trusted. Phylan was smaller in stature, with a gentle manner, and was known for treating patients with remarkable kindness. Varela, Phylan said softly, sitting beside her. I hear rumors about the Council's plan for the human. Is it true they want to move him to a classified research facility? Varela let out a bitter laugh. Yes, in 2 days. There's nothing I can do to stop it, unless I do something illegal, which would probably land me in prison. Phylan hesitated. If you believe it's wrong, I'll stand by you, whatever you decide to do. You've always been the moral compass in this place, and the other staff respect you deeply. Varela's chest tightened with unexpected emotion at the offer. I appreciate that, Phylan. But let's be honest. We're up against the entire government. Any move to help the human escape will be treason. Even if we tried, how far would he get in his current state? His condition is improving, right? Phylan asked. You said he's unbelievably resilient. If we found a small transport craft, something with autopilot, maybe... The idea was so dangerous Varela could hardly think about it. We'd have to disable half the security systems in this center, she said grimly. Or else he'd be caught the moment the ship's transponder registered. A brief silence fell between them. In that gap, Varela could hear the steady hum of the facility's ventilation and the distant beeping of monitors. She knew from experience that moments like this, when one contemplates risking everything for a principle, were pivotal. But risking everything included risking Phylan's career as well. She laid a hand on Phylan's arm. Thank you, she whispered. I'll think carefully about our options. Right now, I just need to be sure he's strong enough to survive whatever they do next. Phylan nodded, and then they parted ways. Alone once more, Varela took the elevator to Ryan's room. The lights had been dimmed to help him rest. He was sitting up, though, frowning at a display of alien text on the overhead screen. When he saw her, he gave a tired grin. Hey, doctor, any chance you can translate some of this stuff for me? I'm not used to hospitals even on Earth, let alone your planet's technology. He tapped a finger lightly against the wires attached to him. Am I a science experiment? She froze for a moment, the question hitting too close to home. Carefully, she approached his bedside. No, you're my patient. But you've had a near-fatal accident, and we're doing everything we can to help you recover. I'm adjusting the translator to let you read our language more easily. Just give me a moment. She fiddled with a small console, then tapped in a few commands. A faint beep signaled that the overhead screen was calibrating. You should see your vitals in a language you can understand now. He blinked, tilting his head to read the new text. Yeah, that's better. His eyes flicked to her face. Thank you. For everything. I keep waking up expecting the worst, but then you show up, and I'm grateful. She managed a small smile. You're surprisingly resilient. We've never treated a human before. I'm impressed. He flexed a hand, wincing. It's not always pleasant, but humans bounce back. Part of some evolutionary advantage. There's so much you probably don't know about Earth. And I know nothing about Satora, except it has some advanced med tech. I owe you my life. Varela swallowed, feeling a sting of guilt. She wanted to tell him everything. The approaching transfer, the government's intentions. But she also feared that shocking him might undo his fragile progress. We do what we can, she offered. We have advanced medicine, yes, but it can only do so much. He gave a half-laugh. Still more than I'd get floating adrift in space. Did my ship survive? Maybe my logs or comm device is salvageable. I need to contact my people. Her stomach sank. She remembered the official directive. Absolutely no unauthorized communications. Your ship was totaled in the crash. As for your belongings, they're under governmental review. Ryan's gaze sharpened. Governmental review? They want to ensure no threat is posed to Satora, she said, choosing her words carefully. Don't worry too much. Focus on healing. He exhaled, closing his eyes. I get it. Happens back home too, government paranoia. But I do need to let Earth know I'm alive. Eventually. We're not the biggest power in the galaxy, so I can see how they might not even realize how far I've gone. But I have friends out there who'll be looking for me. Varela felt an ache in her chest. We'll figure something out, she said softly. In the meantime, rest. She lingered, quietly adjusting his flow, checking the readouts that showed how well his body was regenerating. The uneasy sensation that time was running out gnawed at her. She couldn't let him be taken, but she had no plan for how to stop it. As the day shift staff started arriving, she left Ryan's side to supervise some other patients. But her thoughts never strayed far from him. By midday, she received a brief message on her communicator, an appointment scheduled with Joran in a private corridor. She arrived to find him standing by a window, scanning the city skyline. He turned when she approached, his face unreadable. The Council's transport unit will arrive tomorrow night, he said. They'll move him to the restricted facility at dawn the following day. You'll be expected to sign off on his readiness. Or have you changed your mind about interfering? She drew a sharp breath. He's not ready to be moved. His injuries are still significant. Joran shrugged. We'll take every medical precaution. But it's happening. I wanted to give you the courtesy of a warning. Varela stared at him. And if I formally refuse? His expression hardened. Then we'll remove you from your position, arrest you if necessary. Don't be foolish. He lowered his voice. You must realize there's no way out of this. The only question is whether you're going to make it difficult for yourself. She said nothing, her mind whirring. He took her silence for resignation and nodded curtly, stepping past her with the crisp stride of a man certain of victory. Once he was gone, she slumped against the wall, breathing in ragged bursts. She had never felt so powerless or so furious. In that moment, she decided she would not let them take Ryan. She had only one night to figure out how to pull off an escape that would likely ruin her life, and maybe end it. But at least she'd keep her oath as a doctor. Under the cover of late evening, when the facility was less crowded, Varela made her move. She quickly checked in with Dr. Phylan, who had agreed to help. Phylan had managed to create a temporary glitch in the facility's security monitors, granting them a narrow window where certain cameras would loop old footage. Varela found Ryan awake, though tired, after a physical therapy session. He arched an eyebrow in confusion when she slipped into the room with an urgent look on her face. "We don't have much time," she murmured, scanning for eavesdropping devices. "The government is transferring you to a lab tomorrow morning to experiment on you." There's no easy way to say it. He stared, color draining from his face. "Experiment? Like against my will?" She grimaced. "Yes. They want to find out the secret of your rapid healing. I've tried to reason with them, but it's no use. The only option is to get you off Satora tonight." He struggled to sit up, suppressing a groan from his healing ribs. "I can barely walk more than a few steps without pain. How are we supposed to escape a planet's worth of security?" "I have a small plan," she said quickly. "We can't just fly you out in a public transport. But there's an old cargo shuttle in the western hangar rarely used. If we can board it unseen, we might bypass the main scanning arrays. Dr. Phylan is helping me with the security feeds." He swallowed hard. "You're risking a lot for me." "What?" She hesitated, feeling a surge of emotion. "Because you're my patient, and I can't allow them to treat you like a lab specimen. I took an oath to protect life, no matter whose it is. And I refuse to watch them violate your freedom. Also, you're not the threat they imagine you to be." "Thank you," he whispered, reaching out to squeeze her hand. She squeezed back, heart pounding. "Okay, tell me what to do." They had precious few moments to act. She disconnected him from the main monitors, hooking him up to a portable infusion device that wouldn't trigger alarms. With Phylan's help, they navigated deserted corridors. Varela led, scanning each junction. Ryan walked slowly, his posture tense, wincing at every other step. Phylan occasionally tapped a handheld device, resetting loops on the security cameras. So far, so good. But as they approached a service elevator that led to the western hangar, disaster struck. A cluster of uniformed guards turned a corner. Instinctively, Varela steered Ryan behind a medical cart. Phylan stood there, trying to distract the guards with a fabricated story about a contamination leak, but it was no use. They were suspicious and advanced. One recognized Ryan instantly. The guard shouted, "Stop! Halt, or we'll shoot." Phylan flung himself in front of the guard, attempting to wrestle the blaster away. The guard slammed him aside, pressing a knee into Phylan's back. Varela felt a surge of panic. She tugged on Ryan's arm, tried to help him move faster. But he was in too much pain. His leg buckled, and he collapsed to one knee, breathing heavily. The moment's hesitation was enough. Another guard fired a stun pulse that crackled through the air. Ryan cried out, then slumped against the floor. Varela rushed to shield him with her body, arms spread wide. "Don't," she pleaded. "He's too weak. You'll kill him." A third guard moved in, ignoring her. He seized Ryan's arm and wrenched him to his feet, half dragging him down the hallway. Phylan was pinned, and more security personnel arrived. Joran himself emerged, stepping past the chaos with an air of grim satisfaction. He looked at Varela, who was now kneeling, her eyes burning with rage and heartbreak. "Did you think we wouldn't notice?" he said in a quiet, cold voice. "You've crossed the line. Now this is no longer just about the human. It's about treason. Arrest them both." Varela felt rough hands yank her up, slapping restraints around her wrists. She saw Phylan likewise subdued. Ryan, semi-conscious, had an inhibitor brace clamped around his torso. She struggled in vain. "You're making a mistake. He hasn't done anything wrong." Joran sneered. "He exists. That's enough. You sealed your fate the moment you tried to smuggle him out." They marched Varela and Phylan away in one direction, while Ryan was taken in another. Her last glimpse of him was the pained confusion in his eyes as he disappeared behind a set of armored doors. Then everything crashed into darkness. She didn't know how long she was detained in that windowless cell. Hours, maybe a day. Her wrists hurt where the restraints had bitten into them, and her mind reeled with questions. Had they already taken Ryan to the facility? Was he being dissected or probed? She shuddered. She couldn't bear the thought. She wanted to be there with him, to at least mitigate any cruelty or advocate for sedation. But she had no illusions that the government would allow her anywhere near him. When the door finally opened, bright light stabbed into her eyes, and she squinted. Two guards hauled her out, dragging her through stark corridors until she was pushed into a large chamber, some kind of interrogation room. The overhead lights buzzed softly. A single desk sat in the center, with Joran on the far side, arms folded. He motioned for the guards to leave, then stared at her in silence. She forced herself to meet his gaze. "Where is Ryan?" she asked, her voice low but steady. Joran tapped a device on the desk. "Safe in a high-security lab. Early tests suggest that his regenerative abilities are even more intriguing than we assumed. He's an invaluable asset. And you, Doctor, are a traitor to Satora." She swallowed. "I did what was right. You're the one who's abusing him." He leaned back, as if considering her. "You're a skilled physician, one of the best. The Council respects your intellect. Perhaps we can offer you a chance to salvage your life and career. Help us study the human. Work under official sanction. In return, you won't face the harshest penalties." She felt a surge of revulsion. "So you want me to experiment on him?" "To study him," Joran corrected, "for the betterment of Satora. This is bigger than your moral qualms. Imagine what you could achieve with unlimited funding, top-grade resources. You'd be lauded for breakthroughs in alien medicine." Her face twisted in disgust. "I'll never do it. I refuse." A shadow flickered across Joran's features. He pressed another button, and a holographic display of official documents hovered above the desk. She could see the word treason in bold Cedaran script, next to a potential sentence of 30 years in a high-security detention center. "You'll sign," he said quietly, "or you'll serve a prison term until you're old and forgotten. I doubt your precious human will survive the rigorous experiments without a skilled doctor to ensure minimal damage. Think about that, Doctor." For a moment, her resolve wavered. The thought of Ryan enduring painful trials without anyone to advocate for him was horrifying. But collaborating with Joran would be a deeper betrayal of everything she stood for. She shook her head. "I will not be your puppet. Whatever you do, I won't help you torture him." Joran nodded, as though she had confirmed a suspicion. "Then you'll rot in prison." He clicked off the hologram, then waved the guards back in. "Take her away." She offered no resistance as they pulled her to her feet. Any last hope that she might rescue, Ryan herself vanished like a wisp of smoke. She hadn't even managed to say goodbye. Time lost meaning in her cramped cell. The days and nights blurred. She heard rumors from guards, bits of conversation about the human, references to ongoing tests at a secret lab. She prayed every day that he might find some means of escape, or that some other force in the galaxy would intervene. But as the weeks dragged into months, her hope withered. She withdrew deeper into herself, haunted by the knowledge that she had tried and failed to save him. 2 months into her sentence, she was jolted awake one night by violent shaking beneath her feet. An explosion? Alarms blared throughout the prison complex. She leapt from her cot, pressing herself against the wall as bits of debris rained from overhead. A fierce wind whipped through suddenly, and the entire side of her cell burst inward with a deafening roar. Dust choked the air, stinging her eyes and nose. She coughed, struggling to see. A huge hole had opened in the outer wall, revealing the twinkling lights of the city far below. She was dozens of stories up, with nothing but a dizzying drop beneath. For a split second, she thought the building was collapsing. Then she saw a form silhouetted against the chaos, someone in a harness, suspended from a cable. As the dust cleared, the figure's features sharpened. Ryan. He hung in midair, strapped to some stealth rig that blurred the edges of his body. Cuts and bruises lined his face, but he was alive, and more than that, he was strong. His eyes locked with hers. "Jump!" he shouted over the shriek of alarms. "And I'll catch you." She stared in disbelief. Behind her, the heavy cell door had jammed, so there was no path to the corridor. The only possible escape route was the gaping hole into open air. Terror warred with elation. She took one trembling step toward the edge, peered down at the lethal drop. Her heart hammered so loudly she couldn't hear the sirens anymore. She remembered a moment months ago, pushing Ryan's wheelchair, telling him to trust her. Now, it was reversed. He was telling her to trust him. Summoning every scrap of courage, she sprinted the final steps and leapt. For a stomach-lurching instant, She was suspended in free fall. Then Ryan's arms locked around her, pulling her tightly against him as the cable began to retract. They swung upward, away from the shattered cell. Guards were shouting below, but it was too late. In seconds, they were whisked into a hovering craft, its hull shimmering with advanced cloaking. He set her down, unclipping his harness, and she tried to catch her breath. "How?" she gasped. "No time," he said, grinning through obvious pain. "I'll explain everything once we're airborne." The craft lurched, a pilot's voice crackling through overhead speakers. Ryan guided Varela to a seat. She collapsed into it, her mind spinning with shock and relief. As the craft soared into the night sky, she saw glimpses of the prison below, security lights stabbing through the darkness. They were far out of range in seconds. She turned to Ryan, tears welling in her eyes. "I thought they had you locked away. I thought you'd never escape." He exhaled a shaky breath, dropping into a seat beside her. "They tried, but Earth's got some allies. Turns out, once word got out that a human pilot was captured, the government had a lot of explaining to do. Some officials tried to hide me, but a covert rescue team, part of an interstellar coalition, found me. I joined them as soon as I healed enough to stand. They told me where you were being held. I couldn't just leave you there." She felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I can't believe you came back for me. My life is ruined. They'll label me a fugitive forever." He reached for her hand, gripping it firmly. "You saved my life. Twice, really. The first time medically, the second by trying to get me off Satora. I wasn't going to abandon you. We'll figure out the rest. The galaxy's big enough for us to disappear if we need to." As if on cue, the pilot, an alien with sleek, blue-black skin, turned in her seat. "We're clear of immediate pursuit, setting coordinates for a safe zone under the protection of the Interstellar Coalition. We'll keep radio silence until we're well out of Cedern space." "Understood," Ryan said. He slumped, exhaustion clouding his eyes. Then he glanced at Varela again, worry flickering over his face. "I don't know what the future holds. Earth, Satora, we might never be able to walk around freely on either. But you'll have a chance at life. And you can still practice medicine somewhere out there. We need doctors everywhere." She nodded, letting the tension slowly drain from her. "I'd do it all again," she whispered. "No regrets." He carefully placed an arm around her. The craft vibrated as its engines powered up for a faster-than-sound jump. She closed her eyes, resting her head against Ryan's shoulder. In that moment, the chaos and noise of the universe seemed distant. Perhaps she had lost her home, her standing, and her old life, but she'd save a man who deserved to live, and in doing so, saved a piece of her own soul. Outside the ship's viewport, the city lights of Satora shrank, swallowed by the velvet darkness of space. Varela felt an odd thrill in her chest. Her new path was uncertain. She might never again wander the familiar corridors of the Interstellar Health Center. She might never speak openly with her old colleagues, or enjoy the sunrise reflecting off the crystal spires of Satora's capital. But she was free, and so was Ryan. That freedom, forged in defiance of oppressive orders, was a priceless victory. In the darkness, she whispered, "Thank you," and Ryan, still holding her close, just nodded. An uncertain but hopeful future stretched before them. A future in which an alien doctor and a human pilot could find a place to exist without fear. Perhaps, together, they would build something better than either had known, a new definition of home, built not on shared species or territory, but on shared compassion and trust. And so they left Satora behind, rising toward the endless stars that glimmered with possibility. Their story would spread across worlds, a testament to how compassion could transcend species, how a single brave act could spark hope in the unlikeliest of circumstances. Varela imagined that somewhere out there was a planet where she could once again don a white coat and heal those in need, no matter their blood color or place of origin. Ryan likely had family or friends to reunite with, or maybe he would continue to roam the star lanes as a pilot. Whatever path they chose, they had this moment, and for now, that was enough. The pneumatic doors to the rusty glaive hissed apart with a tired screech, as though they'd been forced to operate beyond capacity one too many times. Inside, the place was a cauldron of stale smoke, flickering neon signs, and desperation. Crosshair Station's favorite dive bar, perched on the fringe of civilized space, was notorious for luring in the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Most came for illegal transactions or to drown their sorrows in synthetic brews that made even the hardest mercenaries' eyes water. A hush fell among the patrons when Marcus, Iron Belt, Hale, stepped inside. He was human, that much was obvious. The hard lines of his face, the 5 o'clock shadow on his jaw, and the eyes that stared out at the world with a quiet, predatory confidence. Those were distinctly Terran traits. A well-worn leather jacket clung to his broad shoulders, riddled with burn marks and patches where older wounds had been repaired. Beneath it, he wore a simple shirt, ragged cargo pants, and thick boots scuffed by countless off-world terrains. But what really stood out was the belt. It was broad and reinforced, more akin to a metal band than a typical strap of fabric. Littered with micro-displays, switches, and faintly glowing compartments, it gleamed under the bar's sputtering lights, demanding attention. They called him Iron Belt for a reason, though a casual observer might assume the nickname was nothing more than a jab at human fashion sense. Anyone who truly knew Marcus's reputation, however, would think twice about underestimating that belt or the man who wore it. The bounties posted throughout the galaxy certainly spoke for themselves, an ever-escalating sum that had reached a breathtaking 1 billion credits. More than enough to tempt even the proudest bounty hunter. As he strode across the sticky floor, the neon lights cast shifting shadows across his features. Dozens of alien eyes followed him. Some sets of eyes were compound, capable of seeing across multiple spectra of light. Some blinked sideways, some didn't blink at all, and others glowed softly. Tentacles twitched, pincers flexed, and antennae stiffened in subtle gestures of alarm or anticipation. Marcus paid them no heed, drifting past scaly tails and multi-jointed limbs with the easy confidence of a man who had survived far worse than a bar full of would-be assassins. He slid onto a battered stool at the bar's cracked metal counter. The bartender, an aging, three-eyed reptilian with a scar running down the ridge of its snout, swallowed hard. Its trembling claws nearly dropped the glass it was polishing. Marcus set both elbows on the counter and fixed the bartender with a flat gaze. "I'll take a Terran whiskey," he said. His voice was low, rough, the kind of voice that had shouted commands over the din of plasma fire. The bartender started pouring. A hush swallowed the rusty glaive like a predator devouring its prey. Conversations died mid-syllable, leaving only the hum of faulty lighting and the faint whir of air recyclers. He heard the shuffle of footsteps behind him, a chair scraping. The chemical reek of synthetic booze was undercut by the stink of sweat and stale breath. Someone was creeping closer. No one in a place like this would pass up the chance to earn a fortune with a single well-placed shot. Marcus felt a tingle at the base of his neck, that innate sense that told him crosshairs were already on his head. But he didn't turn around. He raised the glass to his lips, sipped, and grimaced at the biting burn of the whiskey. "Good to know Crosshair Station stocks something with flavor," he muttered. A gruff snicker sounded behind him. "Flavor hunt." It was a deep, rasping voice. Humans always did have strange tastes. Marcus set his glass down and half-turned in his stool. 4 towering Illyrian mercenaries stood there. Their skin was a pale, bluish hue, and each had a pair of thin antennae that quivered with tension. They wore patchwork armor bristling with metal spikes that looked more decorative than functional. The one who spoke was a good head taller than Marcus, with an elongated skull and black, soulless eyes. "Weren't you taught any manners?" Marcus asked softly. His right hand rested near the buckle of his belt. The Illyrian sneered, revealing rows of tiny, needle-like teeth. "We heard rumors about a Terran with a 1 billion credit bounty on his head. Imagine our surprise when we see you swaggering like you own the place. Seems like you want to die." Laughter rumbled from the Illyrian's companions. Their fingers twitched near the triggers of some decidedly nasty firearms. Ion pistols, energy blades, and one ballistic shotgun rigged with alien modifications. Every pair of eyes in the bar watched intently. Could be they were just sizing up the potential for an easy kill, or maybe they were waiting to see if they'd get hit by a stray shot. Marcus exhaled through his nose. 8 billion credits is a lot of money. Can buy more than just a planet these days. You're unarmed, one of the Illyrians hissed. Except for that ridiculous belt. Marcus turned fully on the stool, letting his jacket fall open. No visible gun on his hip, no rifle strapped across his back, no bandolier of plasma grenades. Just that big belt. He shrugged and smiled, but it was the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. You think so? It happened in an instant. One moment, the Illyrian sneered, and the next, Marcus's belt buckle clicked. The front plate split, releasing a filament so thin it was nearly invisible. A searing hum cut through the air. The closest Illyrian doubled over, a clean slash crossing its midsection. For a split second, it looked like the alien hadn't realized it was cut in two, until blood and internal fluids burst forth, splattering the floor in a sticky mess. The bar erupted. Shouts, curses, and the hiss of plasma weapons filled the air. The other 3 Illyrians drew their guns, but Marcus was already moving. He whipped the monofilament wire around, the superheated edge slicing through a second alien's arm. There was a sizzle, then the arm dropped, weapon clattering. The alien's high-pitched shriek tore through the bar. Patrons ducked under tables, scrambled behind pillars, or simply cowered. But more than a few faces lit up with greed. A man worth 1 billion credits could attract a lot of guns. Marcus sensed movement at his flank. He pressed a hidden stud on the belt, and a wave of shimmering energy erupted from it, forming a translucent shield. Plasma bolt from the left side smashed into the barrier, deflecting in scattered bursts that scarred the ceiling. The second Illyrian, still shrieking over its severed arm, lunged with a dagger. Marcus blocked the blow using the metal plating on the belt itself. He pivoted, and the wire lashed out once more, searing across the alien's throat. Another spray of bluish blood. A hush spread across the bar again, though pockets of gunfire still flickered. Marcus turned his gaze to the remaining 2. They exchanged nervous glances. The biggest among them hefted a clunky ballistic shotgun. Sparks danced along its barrel, suggesting some kind of electric modification. With a roar, he fired. The projectile sped toward Marcus in a blur. The monofilament wire retracted into the belt in half a blink, and the buckle reconfigured. Metal plates folded with mechanical precision, forming a compact grav shield that absorbed the slug in a burst of kinetic energy. The leftover force slammed into the bar, toppling stools and smashing a row of half-empty bottles. Marcus flicked another switch, sending the stored kinetic power right back through the shield. A directed pulse of gravitational distortion caught the shotgun-wielding Illyrian in the chest, catapulting it backward through 2 tables. Patrons scattered as the alien crashed into the wall, chest armor dented inward. A wet cough rattled in its throat. The last Illyrian, eyes wide, tried to scramble away. Marcus's belt parted near the buckle, shaping itself into a short, humming blade of compressed plasma. He lunged forward, driving it into the alien's back. Smoke curled around the wound as the alien spasmed, then went limp. Silence fell again. Marcus drew a slow breath, scanning the room. Several onlookers cowered behind overturned tables. Some looked like they might still be considering an attempt on his life, but none moved. The bartender clutched the edge of the counter, eyes bulging at the carnage. Marcus deactivated the plasma blade, allowing the belt to revert to its usual form, a large, conspicuous band of metal that gleamed in the flickering neon lights. He took another sip of his whiskey. "I'll pay for any damage," he told the bartender. "Put on my tab." Then he stood, stepping over the twitching remains of the Illyrians. They were no threat now. In the dim corridor outside, the station's stale air tasted like recycled metal. Sirens were beginning to wail in the distance. Crosshair Station's minimal security forces always arrived late, partly from incompetence, partly from corruption. They'd see a chance for a payday, though. They always did. Marcus knew better than to linger. He traced a route through back corridors, ignoring the frantic footsteps in the distance. The belt was still warm against his waist, residual heat from the plasma transformations pulsing through its alloy. But it wasn't just a weapon. It never had been. As he climbed a rickety stairwell leading to the station's upper levels, shards of memory cut through his mind, reminding him of the belt's true origin. He'd once been Sergeant Marcus Hale, Terran Special Forces. Clean record. Dedicated, loyal, proud to serve. The day everything changed, he and his squad discovered that the so-called Galactic Tribunal was far from the benevolent government they claimed to be. They were running a slave trade, targeting not only lesser-developed alien species, but also humans from off-grid colonies. Entire families sold to unscrupulous buyers, forced labor, organ harvesting, unspeakable cruelty. He'd seen children caged, their eyes vacant with terror. He'd reported it, expecting justice. Instead, the tribunal ordered his squad to stand down, hush it up, and move on as though nothing had happened. When they refused, things went from bad to worse. Half his squad was cut down in an ambush orchestrated by official channels. The rest went rogue. They fought, freed hundreds of captives, and burned outposts belonging to the slave network. As punishment, the tribunal branded them terrorists and put bounties on their heads. The bounty rose each time they struck another blow, each time they embarrassed the powers that be. Marcus was the last one alive. It wasn't something he wore with pride. The belt had started as a standard piece of Terran gear, but each fallen comrade had contributed a modification or piece of tech gleaned from raids. Sasha's shielding module, Kova's monofilament cutter, Ramirez's gravity distorter. Every time he lost someone, he integrated a bit of their spirit into this belt. And in his darkest hours, it kept him alive. Iron Belt, they called him. Part legend, part nightmare. He'd made sure that the tribunal felt his wrath every step of the way. He entered a side passage that opened into a wide junction. Omega Dome, Crosshair Station's bustling black market. A sprawling bazaar spread out beneath a transparent canopy that offered a patchy view of the stars beyond. Stalls lined the perimeter, each manned by shifty aliens peddling contraband weapons, illicit substances, or occasionally live cargo. The crowd was thick, voices a chaotic swirl of haggling and threats in a dozen languages. The scent of exotic spices and burnt circuits permeated the stale air. Marcus needed information, and he knew just who to talk to. Moving through the crowd, ignoring the suspicious glares and twitching fingers on triggers, he headed for a far corner where a narrow stall displayed holos of captured creatures. Each was labeled with a price tag or a set of features. Weapons for sale, living or otherwise. The stall owner, a biped with two elongated heads protruding from a single torso, noticed him and stiffened. Marcus Hale, the left head said in a raspy whisper. Been a while. I heard rumors you were on Crosshair Station. The right head finished the thought. But we didn't believe you'd be foolish enough to show yourself in public. I like to surprise people. Marcus stopped in front of the stall, scanning the flickering holos. Word is the tribunal's got a big shipment of livestock coming through soon. Humans included. Both heads exchanged a nervous glance. The vendor's long fingers adjusted the stall's controls, flicking the holos off. You really shouldn't be asking about that. People who do tend to disappear. Marcus let his gaze wander across the bazaar. I'll pay for coordinates. Or, I'll take them if you won't deal. A heavy pause followed. The vendor sighed, the left head muttering a string of curses. Information's not cheap. You might have the money, but do you have the time? I've heard the tribunal dispatched a dedicated kill team just for you. They're out for blood. Marcus's jaw tightened. That's nothing new. Silence outpost, the right head whispered. Out beyond the Crescent Nebula. That's where they process new arrivals before shipping them off. I can pass you the flight path. But if I do, you're going to owe me. I like being alive, Hale. Marcus reached inside his jacket, retrieving a small data stick the size of his thumb. He set on the stall's counter. Coordinates. Schedules. Whatever you got. The vendor hesitated, then plugged the stick into a rickety data port. Symbols flashed across a tiny screen. This is everything we've gleaned from rumors and partial transcripts. Word is, there's a transport leaving soon. The vendor's left head leaned closer. They've got some special cargo, fresh from Outer Rim colonies. Marcus's gut twisted. He thought of that final mission, seeing children with vacant, terrified eyes. The rage he carried burned a little hotter. I'll see to it that transport never reaches its destination. I figured, the right head muttered. Both heads looked at him with a strange mix of pity and fear. We're done here. And if anyone asks, you force the information out of us, understood? I don't want my brain splattered. Marcus almost smirked. Fine by me. He pocketed the stick. But as he turned to go, a sudden hush rippled through the crowd. Tension spiked. His belt buckle seemed to thrum with anticipation. Trouble had arrived. He spun in time to see the station's heavily armored security forces pouring into the dome from multiple entrances. Black helmets and faceplates masked any hint of their species, but their posture screamed lethal intent. Plasma rifles lifted. The lead officer's voice boomed through an external speaker. All citizens stand down. We have reason to believe Jonas. No, Marcus, Iron Belt Hale, is here. Cooperate and you won't be harmed. Marcus's lips curled in a humorless smile. They never get my name right. He reached for his belt. The crowd erupted into panic. Some tried to slip away, others dropped to the floor or ducked behind crates. The security troopers fanned out, rifles spitting plasma in short bursts. A burst of gunfire lit the nearest stall on fire, sending a swirl of sparks into the air. Marcus ducked behind a column. The vendor with two heads scrambled away, cursing. Bolts of blue-hot energy peppered the metal plating behind Marcus, scorching deep black scars into the surface. He tapped a button on his belt and triggered the shield generator. A shimmering barrier projected around him, deflecting shots. He couldn't stay pinned down forever, though. With a grimace, he removed a small, disc-shaped device from a side compartment of the belt. Clicking a switch, he rolled it across the floor toward the center of the trooper's formation. The disc beeped once, twice. Then it detonated in a blinding flash, releasing a pulse of magnetic shrapnel that blew outward in every direction. Several troopers were shredded, their armor compromised by thousands of tiny razor-like flechettes. Others reeled, disoriented by the sudden onslaught. Marcus lunged out from cover, switching the belt's configuration mid-step. A segment of the belt folded out into a short, broad plasma rifle. He took aim and squeezed the trigger. Screaming arcs of superheated plasma slammed into the troopers. They fell like dominoes, some with smoking craters in their chests, others missing limbs. The stench of burning flesh and molten armor filled the dome. The crowd scattered in all directions, desperate to avoid the crossfire. One unfortunate merchant took a stray bolt to the leg and collapsed, howling in pain. Marcus advanced, the belt rifle glowing with lethal energy. More troopers poured in from side passages. They carried heavier weaponry, riot shields designed to block energy attacks, plus a pair of hulking mechs that stomped forward on piston-like legs. The mechs swiveled machine cannons toward him, unleashing staccato bursts of plasma shells that chewed through stalls and signage. He ducked behind a twisted hunk of metal that had once been part of a kiosk. The barrage gouged the floor, molten metal dripping from each impact. His cover wouldn't last long. Toggling the rifle back into belt form, he braced a hand on the ground, pressing a second button on the belt's underside. A swirl of mechanical whirs and clicks preceded the emergence of a slender rod from his belt, a personal grav anchor capable of localized manipulation. He planted it firmly against the floor. The mechs kept firing, sending molten sprays of metal overhead. Marcus gritted his teeth and focused on the belt's controls, adjusting the frequency. Suddenly, the gravitational field around the mechs intensified, pulling them forward. They stumbled, their metal feet grinding across the floor. With another twist of a dial, Marcus reversed the field's polarity. The mechs were flung back violently, one smashing into a cluster of troopers while the other toppled against the dome's curved wall, cracking the transparent canopy. Without missing a beat, Marcus dashed forward. He drew the monofilament wire from the belt again, activating it with a flick of his wrist. The nearest mech tried to regain its balance, but he whipped the wire around one of its legs and yanked. The superheated filament sliced through metal plating like butter, severing hydraulic lines. Sparks and fluid sprayed from the stump, the mech crashing onto its side with a thunderous impact. He vaulted onto its torso, pressing the plasma emitter built into the belt right against the mech's head unit and firing a point-blank shot. The mech's core erupted in a shower of sparks and twisted metal, toppling lifelessly. Troopers approached from behind, hurling grenades. Marcus dove off the mech's shell, tucking into a roll. Explosions shook the ground, fragments of shrapnel pinging off the belt's partial shield. Chaos reigned across the dome. Fires burned unchecked in the corners, illumination flickering with each new weapon discharge. Corpses littered the stalls, both of troopers and hapless bystanders. Marcus knew he was running out of time. A mechanical roar shattered the air. The second mech had righted itself and was charging across the dome, a massive pneumatic blade extended from its right arm. Marcus cursed under his breath. He reconfigured the belt, snapping it into a heavy pistol mode that crackled with high-voltage plasma rounds. Each shot hammered the mech's torso, scorching armor plating. The mech barely slowed. It swung the blade down in a vicious arc, forcing Marcus to dive aside. He narrowly avoided getting cleaved in two. Snarling, he pressed a button on the belt that initiated a hacking protocol. The mech's systems were advanced, but so was the tech integrated into Marcus's belt, courtesy of a stolen Tribunal research AI. Panels along the belt's side lit up in shifting patterns. The mech paused mid-swing, twitched, and then convulsed as if fighting its own controls. Slowly, it turned away from Marcus, targeting the troopers instead. The pilot inside shrieked, but it was too late. The mech unloaded a volley of rounds into the ranks of its own allies, carving a swath of destruction. Troopers scrambled, some firing back in confusion. With one final spasm, the mech's power core overloaded, resulting in a deafening explosion that blew out half the dome's lights. Marcus shielded his face from the storm of debris. Flaming shards of metal tumbled across the floor, while arcs of electricity danced over shattered control panels. The few surviving troopers turned tail and fled, barking desperate orders into their comms. He guessed reinforcements would soon flood this entire station, maybe an entire Tribunal fleet if they had the resources on standby. Smoke clogged his lungs as he rose and surveyed the carnage. Omega Dome had become a battlefield. He slipped through the debris, retrieving the small grav anchor, and hurried toward a side corridor leading to the station's subterranean passages. The sirens overhead howled without mercy. He ran through a labyrinth of metal halls, vents spewing steam that smelled of iron and oil, until he reached a hatch marked with hazard stripes. A quick override from the belt's hacking tool popped it open. Sliding into the hatch, he descended into the station's lower decks, where waste disposal tunnels snaked like intestines through the station's bowels. Stale air closed around him. The darkness pressed in on all sides, broken only by the faint glow of emergency lights. Water dripped from overhead pipes, forming puddles that reflected the dull red alarm lighting. Marcus kept one hand on the belt's illumination function. He thought again of the data stick in his pocket. Silence Outpost, where the real fight awaited. He remembered how his old squad had died, one by one, in the Tribunal's merciless traps. Sasha bleeding out in a corner of some half-destroyed facility. Ramirez pinned down by a sniper's bullet, or Kova taken by a swarm of drones. The belt was all that remained, each modification a testament to their sacrifice. Sometimes, he hated the belt for reminding him of everything he'd lost. Yet he also treasured it because it carried them with him. Every kill he made, every slaver ring he dismantled, was for them. His mind drifted to the children he'd found in a cage on one of those outposts. They'd been terrified, hungry, some missing limbs from experimental procedures. That image haunted him. He refused to let the Tribunal continue that cruelty. If a billion-credit bounty was their attempt to silence him, they'd failed spectacularly. He'd tear down every last piece of their operation or die trying. A jolt rocked the station, nearly knocking him off his feet. Distant explosions echoed through the tunnels. The Tribunal kill team must have escalated their assault in the dome. Marcus figured he had limited time before they locked down every dock and exit route. Eventually, he reached an old cargo lift, rusted from disuse. He climbed onto its platform and forced the manual controls to lower him to the docking bay. The squealing of metal cables accompanied his descent. Lights flickered, revealing half a dozen small ships moored in poorly maintained berths. Machinery hissed, and an acrid stench filled the air. Fuel leaks, perhaps. He spotted a battered short-range freighter. Might not be glamorous, but it would serve as a temporary escape vehicle. Maneuvering quickly, he hacked the bay doors, slipping inside the freighter. The interior reeked of old lubricants and stale rations. He collapsed into the pilot's seat, hooking his belt's hacking module into the control console. A flurry of data scrolled across a cracked screen. In moments, the engines sputtered to life. Plasma fire raked the hull as troopers poured into the hangar. Marcus cursed, activating the thrusters. The ship jolted upward, scraping against the hangar ceiling. A stolen craft with minimal shielding wasn't exactly ideal, but it would have to do. He hammered the throttle. The docking bay doors parted just enough for him to slip out into the vacuum of space, leaving Crosshair Station behind in a swirl of jumbled lights and weapons fire. Gaining distance, he set the autopilot to a safe vector. Then, finally, he leaned back, letting out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. His side throbbed from a near miss earlier. He peeled back his jacket, revealing a scorch mark across his ribs. Pain lanced through him, but it was nothing a med patch couldn't handle. He rummaged in his pocket, found a small first aid supply, and pressed a patch against the wound. It stung, but soon a numbness spread, dulling the worst of it. Once he felt stable, he pulled out the data stick the vendor had given him. He slotted it into the console, letting the belt's integrated AI run decryption routines. Silence Outpost, hidden near the Crescent Nebula, had minimal official records. Based on the fragments of coordinates, it was apparently an old mining station converted into a secret prison and slave processing facility. The incomplete logs hinted at a large transport carrying human captives scheduled to depart within the next 2 days. Marcus's gut churned. 2 days, maybe less. He set a course. The battered freighter's warp drive groaned, but would get him there, provided no tribunal dreadnoughts intercepted him along the way. While he waited for the NAV computer to spool, he dared to close his eyes for a few seconds. Images of his squad flickered behind his eyelids. Old jokes, shared rations, final screams. Then the horrifying snapshots of twisted corridors, cages brimming with enslaved innocents. He clenched his fists. Never again. 15 hours later, the Crescent Nebula loomed on the ship's scanners. Clouds of cosmic dust glowed in vibrant reds and oranges, lit from within by newborn stars. A mesmerizing sight that belied the darkness hidden in its remote corners. Silence Outpost was nestled on the fringe, a cluster of metal scaffolding and domes that clung to a large asteroid. The complex, if the scans were right, bristled with sensors and external turrets. Marcus slowed to sublight speed just beyond sensor range. He suited up in a threadbare EVA outfit he found in the freighter's lockers, then modified the belt to include small thrusters. This was an insane plan, but stealth was his best shot. Flying straight in would get him vaporized. The outpost had old but potent defenses. He'd rely on the belt's advanced cloak function, one more stolen tribunal technology, to hide him from short-range scans. Cycling the freighter's airlock, he stepped into the vacuum of space. Stars glittered in a silent panorama. He triggered the thrusters, drifting away from the ship. The belt's cloaking field shimmered around him, bending light so that from a distance, he appeared nearly invisible. Slowly, carefully, he floated toward the outpost, guided by minimal bursts of thrust to keep his trajectory aligned with an external maintenance hatch. The journey felt endless. The only sound was his heartbeat and the soft hiss of oxygen in his helmet. He reached the asteroid's surface, magnetizing his boots to gain purchase. Towering domes and spires rose around him, their surfaces pitted from micrometeor impacts. The outpost had been cobbled together from old mining gear, half-buried cables, and industrial plating. He found the hatch he was looking for, an emergency airlock with no external guard. The belt's hacking module engaged. It took a minute of anxious waiting, but the hatch finally slid open. Inside, stale air hissed against his helmet. He stepped through into a dim corridor. Red emergency lights illuminated the rough metal walls. Distant rumbling suggested machinery at work. Perhaps the outpost was still processing, or maybe they were refining something far more sinister. He stowed the EVA suit's helmet and reactivated his belt stealth function. Not total invisibility. Anyone looking directly at him from close range might see a shimmer, but it gave him a precious advantage. He slipped through the corridors, avoiding patrols of armed guards wearing the insignia of either the Tribunal or various mercenary groups. At one junction, he pressed himself flat against a wall as a pair of green-skinned, insectoid aliens skittered past, chirping in a language he couldn't understand. He followed signs indicating the cargo loading areas, deducing those where they'd likely keep living cargo before shipping it off. Before he could reach the cargo bay, though, an alarm blared overhead. Red lights strobed. Had his infiltration been detected? A mechanical voice crackled through the intercom in an alien dialect. Marcus caught fragments. Intruder, kill on sight, human. He realized they must have discovered his entry or detected the forced override on the hatch. Footsteps thundered down a side corridor. Marcus cursed under his breath, pressing himself into the shadows behind a stack of crates. 6 guards rushed past, heavily armed. Once their footsteps faded, he moved on. The deeper he delved, the more gruesome the outpost became. He passed holding pens where alien creatures whimpered. Some were alive, some looked half dead. An overwhelming stench of filth and despair pervaded the cramped cells. He paused at a sealed door that radiated an intense cold. A sign above it read, "Organ Storage." A wave of nausea rolled through him. The Tribunal's cruelty knew no bounds. Closing his eyes, he forced himself onward. Hatred built inside him like a storm. There was no redemption for the monsters behind such atrocities. Finally, he reached the cargo loading section, a massive space of interconnected platforms. Conveyor belts and stacked crates soared 3 stories high. Suspended walkways crisscrossed overhead. In the distance, an airlock connected to an external docking platform. From there, a large transport vessel was visible through the reinforced window. No time to waste. He skirted the edges of the bay until he found a vantage point behind tall crates. Looking down, he counted at least 20 mercenaries. Many wore advanced armor, carrying rifles that looked fresh off a Tribunal assembly line. And then he saw them, rows of cages. Humans, some with tattered clothes, many with bruises or lacerations. A few looked too weak to stand. There were also other species, but Marcus's focus zeroed in on the humans first. The final straw was a smaller cage at the far end. Children, silent and staring, eyes hollow. Something in him snapped. He stepped out from behind crates. Cloaking be damned. "Hey," he roared. His voice echoed through the cargo bay. "You're going to release them, or I'll carve you all into pieces." Weapons swung in his direction. Shouts reverberated, some in basic, some in alien tongues. Marcus clicked his belt. The cloak dropped, replaced by the bright hum of the belt's personal shield. Blaster fire tore across the distance, ricocheting off the energy barrier. He had no illusions about the shield's limits. It could only take so much. He sprinted forward, returning fire with a plasma emitter built into the belt. 2 mercenaries went down, their chests punched clean through by superheated bolts. A barrage of gunfire hammered his shield. Sparks flew. He took cover behind a crate, reconfiguring the belt with practice speed. A micro-drone deployment module popped free, hovering at his side. It looked like a small orb with spinning blades. Marcus let it loose. The micro-drone zipped forward, weaving around enemy shots. Tiny lasers flickered from its surface, slicing into unprotected flesh. Mercenaries shrieked as limbs were severed. The floor grew slick with alien blood of various colors. The stench was sickening. A second wave of guards arrived from a side passage, unleashing heavy weaponry. Marcus's shield flickered precariously. He dove for a row of shipping containers, pressing a switch on his belt that activated a heavy grav pulse in front of him. The pulse caught half a dozen guards mid-stride, slamming them into the wall with bone-crushing force. Cries of agony filled the air. One guard in advanced armor hefted a rocket launcher. The belt's sensors pinged a warning as the projectile whooshed closer. Marcus vaulted over crates, the rocket detonating behind him with a blast that nearly knocked him off his feet. Ringing filled his ears, dust and debris swirling. He tapped a hidden button, spawning the monofilament wire in his hand. A quick slash parted the rocket launcher guard from shoulder to hip. Smoking entrails spilled out. Bullets whined. He spotted a female, Merc, snapping off precision shots with a kinetic rifle. One round tore across his shoulder, ripping through the jacket. Pain flared white-hot. He snarled, pressed the belt's medical injection port to his arm, and fired a dose of coagulant. Blood flow slowed. Gasping, he turned on the Merc, flicking the belt to produce a short plasma blade. He dashed across the cargo bay, ignoring the searing protest from his wound, and ran her through. Her eyes widened in shock before she collapsed in a limp heap. In the midst of chaos, he caught sight of a control station perched on a raised platform, ringed by bulletproof glass. A figure stood inside, observing the carnage with cold detachment. He wore ornate black armor, and a tattered, imposing cloak draped his broad shoulders. Warden Araketh, if the rumors were right, a high-ranking enforcer of the tribunal. Araketh pressed a button, and alarms wailed. Marcus gritted his teeth. He spotted a steel staircase leading up to that control station. More troopers rushed to intercept him. He unleashed another wave from his micro-drone, creating a path of eviscerated bodies. The stench of charred flesh grew, overpowering. Step by step, he fought his way up, deflecting plasma bolts with his shield. One well-aimed shot grazed his side. Another smashed the shield generator, forcing him to rely on the belt's other defenses. At the top of the stairs, two hulking brutes in exosuits blocked his path. Each suit bristled with rotating blades and pneumatic fists. Marcus ducked the first swing, letting the second exosuit's punch slam into the wall, denting it. He jammed the belt's monofilament wire around the brute's arm and yanked. The wire sliced through servos and metal plating with a shower of sparks, severing the limb. The brute howled as hydraulic fluid and blood spilled from the ruined stump. The second exosuit slammed into Marcus from behind, sending him skidding across the walkway. His vision blurred, ears ringing. The suit lunged, raising a spiked gauntlet. Marcus triggered the belt's grav distorter again. The exosuit froze, lifting off the walkway in a localized gravity reversal. Then it crashed to the ceiling with a sickening crunch, pinned by reversed gravitational forces. Its pilot struggled, but the plating buckled, bones snapping. Marcus panted, sweat trickling down his temples, as the exosuit fell silent. He faced the control station door. Reinforced glass. Araketh stood on the other side, his reptilian face twisted in a sadistic grin. He flicked a switch, and a series of embedded turrets lowered from the ceiling around the station. They pivoted, training their sights on Marcus. Araketh's voice came through a speaker. "Impressive, human. You're as brutal as the stories say. But your rampage ends here." The turrets opened fire. Marcus threw himself flat, a hail of energy beams scorching the air overhead. Glass shattered around him, the walkway's rails melting under the intense heat. He clenched his jaw, reconfiguring the belt for hacking. His wounded side burned with every breath, but he pressed on. The belt's sensors locked onto the turret's frequencies. Slowly, sparks of electronic sabotage danced across his belt's console, searching for a vulnerability in the turret network. One by one, the turrets stuttered, then turned inward, firing at each other. Explosions tore them to shreds. Marcus staggered to his feet, hammered his fist against the control station's door. The glass cracked, but didn't give. Inside, Araketh calmly toggled another switch. The cargo bay's overhead lights turned from red to green, and a mechanical hum reverberated through the structure. "Self-destruct initiated," Araketh said, voice dripping with cruel amusement. "Hope you enjoy your final moments." Marcus glared. He took 3 steps back, pressed a sequence on his belt. A shaped charge extended from a hidden compartment. He slapped it onto the door. With a bright flash, the explosion tore the reinforced glass free of its frame, knocking Araketh backward. Marcus lunged inside, lowering his shoulder into the battered door. Araketh was quick, swiping out with an energy whip that crackled with lethal power. Marcus barely evaded it. The whip carved a molten line through the floor, sending sparks flying. Araketh wore advanced servo armor beneath that cloak. He moved with unnatural speed, lashing out again. Marcus whipped the monofilament wire up, tried to entangle the whip. The 2 weapons crackled, sending arcs of energy skittering across the station. Araketh feinted left, then drove a powered punch into Marcus's gut. The blow landed with bone-jarring force, hurling him into a console. Dazed, Marcus tasted blood on his lips. With a roar, Araketh raised the whip for a final strike. Marcus forced himself up, battered and bleeding. He tapped the belt's control pad, switching to the plasma blade. A humming sword of bluish energy extended from his buckle. He met Araketh's downward blow, plasma blade against energy whip. Sparks flew. Each tried to overpower the other, pressing close. The room pulsed with lethal arcs of superheated electricity. Marcus ground his teeth, channeling every last ounce of strength. With a swift twist, he flicked the monofilament wire around Araketh's wrist. The wire sizzled as it met the whip's handle. Araketh snarled, struggling to wrench free, but the superheated filament bit deeper. Metal parted with a shriek. The whip's handle clattered to the floor, along with half of Araketh's gauntlet. A roar of pain and fury erupted from him. Marcus capitalized on that moment, driving the plasma blade through Araketh's torso. The reptilian's eyes bulged, greenish blood spewing as he collapsed to his knees. But the alarms continued to blare. Araketh managed a final, rasping laugh. "This station will bury you along with everyone inside. You haven't won." Marcus kicked the dying warden aside and accessed the control console. A countdown glowed on the main display, just under 3 minutes. The station's reactors were set to overload. He grimaced. Shutting it off would be ideal, but any attempt at a manual override might be locked behind layers of security. A quick system check confirmed that Araketh had locked every failsafe behind biometric encryption. Even with the belt's hacking prowess, it would take too long. The clock ticked down relentlessly. Through the shattered window, he could see the cages of captives. They stared up in terror at the blaring alarms. The children cowered, hugging one another. No time to lead everyone out normally. He pulled up the cargo bay's logs and discovered a cluster of escape pods on the far side of the station. That might be their only shot at survival. He raced back down to the cargo floor, ignoring the smoldering ruins of turrets. The slaves cringed at his approach, some backing away, others too weak to move. He quickly slashed open the cage locks with a monofilament wire. "Go! Now!" he shouted. "Escape pods this way." Some blinked in confusion, but the older ones understood. They stumbled forward, helping those too feeble to stand. Marcus led them through a labyrinth of corridors. Every second the countdown hovered in his mind, time slipping away. A tremor jolted the station, accompanied by the ominous groan of metal under stress. A child cried out as sparks showered from a broken overhead fixture. "Keep moving," he urged. Another quake. The overhead lights flickered and died, replaced by strobing red emergency lighting. They emerged into a chamber lined with half a dozen escape pods. He forced the door open manually, then ushered them inside, jamming as many freed captives as possible into each pod. Buttons flickered. The pods were in rough shape, but they had enough fuel for short-distance flight. It would have to do. One of the older prisoners, a grizzled Terran with a ragged beard, turned to Marcus. "Aren't you coming with us?" Marcus shook his head. "I'll find my own way out." He sealed the pod's hatch and hit the launch override on the control panel. With a thunderous rumble, The pods jettisoned one by one, streaking away from the doomed station. Now, alone in the corridor, Marcus sprinted for the docking bay. Araketh's transport might still be there, a big, bulky freighter designed for carrying living cargo. Sure enough, the ramp was lowered, its engines idling. The moment he entered, the hull shook violently. Reactor meltdown was imminent. He raced through the transport's narrow corridors, found the cockpit. A single pilot, a panicked alien in tribunal uniform, gasped at the sight of him and reached for a weapon. Marcus shot him in the chest with a quick plasma burst from his belt's emitter. The pilot slumped over the console. "Sorry, buddy." Marcus hauled the corpse aside, ignoring the nauseating smell. He slammed his hand on the ignition. The ship rumbled, metal thrusters flickering to life. He wasted no time, guiding the transport up through a crumbling bay door. The entire outpost quaked with the force of the impending meltdown. Explosions tore through deck, plating, and bulkheads. Fire gushed from vents. Marcus wrestled with the controls, the transport veering dangerously close to a chunk of falling debris. With a desperate pivot, he angled the thrusters upward. Silence Outpost imploded in a flash of light behind him, collapsing into a fireball that consumed the asteroid. The shockwave rattled the ship. Systems beeped in protest, warning lights flaring. Marcus stabilized the transport, letting out a ragged breath. He stared at the molten remains of the outpost on the view screen, then at the darkness of space beyond. Another alarm shrieked. The sensor console showed multiple inbound signatures. A tribunal fleet had arrived in force. Frigates, corvettes, maybe even a dreadnought. They were scanning for him, and they'd surely detect the transport's unauthorized departure. The belt's AI beeped softly, analyzing the ship's capabilities. Not great, but maybe enough to make a jump to FTL if he cleared the gravitational well. He hammered the coordinates of a random jump point far from tribunal territory. The engine spooled. On the sensors, he saw interceptors breaking formation, streaking in. Plasma bolts whizzed past, rocking the transport. Marcus gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain in his side. He tapped the belt, activating an experimental EM pulse. The transport's generator surged, releasing a wave of electromagnetic interference that temporarily scrambled the tribunal's targeting systems. Interceptors peeled off in confusion. "This is going to be close," he muttered to himself. Stars blurred, the FTL drive word, and then reality stretched. The transport vanished into hyperspace just as a barrage of torpedoes detonated where it had been, leaving the tribunal fleet behind with nothing but debris and the scattered remains of Silence Outpost. Marcus slumped in the pilot's seat, eyes half-lidded with exhaustion. Blood seeped through his bandages, each breath sending a jagged spike of agony through his chest. But he was alive. The belt, locked around his waist, hummed softly, as though acknowledging another victory at a terrible cost. He thought of the freed prisoners drifting in escape pods. Maybe they'd find rescue ships. Maybe they'd limp home. Whatever the outcome, at least they weren't trapped in that nightmare anymore. An incoming transmission crackled through the transport's battered comm system. A pre-recorded tribunal broadcast, no doubt. "Attention all spacefaring vessels. The criminal Marcus Iron Belt Hale remains at large. He is extremely dangerous. A bounty of 1 billion credits is offered for his capture or termination. Citizens are advised not to." Marcus killed the transmission with a swipe of his hand. He leaned back, letting the thrum of the FTL drive lull him. At times, it felt like he was fighting an unwinnable war, chasing redemption for countless atrocities committed by those in power. But every freed captive was proof that his efforts mattered. He glanced down at the belt, marred by scratches and dry blood. Memories of Sasha, Kova, Ramirez, and the others flickered through his mind. They were gone, but a piece of them lived on in that belt, fueling his crusade. His gaze drifted to the console, where an NAV chart flickered. Somewhere beyond the next star lane lay another slave ring, another outpost, another pocket of evil shielded by the tribunal's corruption. He would find them. He would dismantle them, one by one, until the entire galaxy understood that humans, and every other species would not be treated as currency. Maybe they all thought he was unarmed, that a single Terran with a strange belt was no match for advanced war fleets and thousands of mercenaries. Let them keep thinking that until the last possible second. Marcus exhaled softly, feeling the ache in every muscle. He'd lost track of how many battles he'd fought, how many times he should have died. But as long as he drew breath, the tribunal would never be safe. The next time they saw him, they'd learn all over again why they called him Iron Belt Hale. No matter the odds, he would keep fighting. For the children in cages, for the innocents torn from their homes, for his fallen squad. And if one day someone collected that billion credit bounty, at least he would have carved a bloody scar across the face of tyranny first. He set a fresh course on the NAV console, a swirling patch of uncharted territory. The transport's engines rumbled. Outside the cockpit window, the stars were a bright tapestry against the infinite black. His belt quietly whirred as he adjusted a few final settings, sealing the whole breach from earlier. He cast a final look at the silent corridor behind him, imagining all the slaves who would have been crammed into the gloom. Not anymore. That was one victory, but there would need to be thousands more. He engaged the jump, and the stars elongated into radiant streaks. As the ship hurled itself into the unknown, Marcus let his eyes slip shut. Before him stretched a long, violent road, paved with the bones of those who dare to profit from suffering. And if the aliens out there still believed the human was unarmed, they'd have one hell of a shock waiting for them the moment they saw his belt.